Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me. Although this was pre-recorded, in 2 nights from now, we will be having a live discussion to go over the case of Amy Lynn Bradley, who has been missing since 1998. But in advance of this, we will be discussing the backstory, things that have changed since I first started researching this true crime case more than a decade ago, the timeline, the theories, the sightings, the picture, and my personal belief of what happened before I hear yours. I encourage you to do your own research because this is broad strokes and I'm not going into the nitty gritty of everything. I will be discussing things present on Wikipedia and in the recently released 3-part Netflix series, Amy Bradley is Missing. But if you don't have Netflix, there are many other videos and articles discussing this case. This is just a reminder that I am not discussing everything here, not a deep dive, more of a rundown of things we could possibly discuss Wednesday night. And please feel free to leave comments below. I will be reading each and every one. Also, I am obviously reading from a script stationed below me, so please forgive the looks downward. Let's begin with part 1, brief backstory. Ron Bradley, Amy's father, had won an all-expenses-paid Caribbean cruise through his employer. It was exclusively for Ron and his wife, Iva, but they paid extra to include Amy and her younger brother, Brad, whose name is actually Ronald, but was referred to by friends and family as Brad. They flew from Virginia to Puerto Rico to board Rhapsody of the Seas, a Royal Caribbean International cruise ship, on the afternoon of Saturday, the 21st of March, 1998. The ship was bound for several stops, including Curacao, a Dutch island off the coast of Venezuela. Amy, a 23-year-old recent graduate from Longwood University and a strong swimmer with lifeguard training, had recently accepted a job with a computer consulting firm and was due to start upon returning home. She had also recently adopted a puppy. There were some reports by Amy's friends that she was nervous about the trip and apprehensive about being so far at sea that she could no longer see land. But her brother Brad said with conviction that he saw no signs of hesitation in the days leading up to the cruise, just excitement. Both can be true. Perhaps Amy was putting on a brave face for her family, but was a touch more honest with her friends. We may never know. Go to part 2, the timeline. Beginning with Saturday, March 21st, 1998. The Rhapsody of the Seas leaves Puerto Rico for their first port of call, which was Aruba. On March 23rd, 1998, the Rhapsody of the Seas spends the day in Aruba, and at the end of the day, departs for Curacao. That evening, Brad and Amy attended a dance party at the ship's disco on Deck 9. The Calypso band Blue Orchid was performing. Amy was photographed and videotaped dancing closely with one of the band's members, Alastair Douglas. His nickname was Yellow, and that is how we will address him going forward. Tuesday, March 24th, 1998. This is the day Amy disappears, and it begins at 1 a.m. when Yellow claimed to leave the nightclub party at this time. At 3:35 a.m., Brad returned to the cabin. His key card entry was electronically logged in. This is a good time to mention there is no way for key cards to log when people leave the cabin. 3:40 a.m. Amy followed 5 minutes later with her key card electronically recording her entrance into the cabin. She and Brad sat talking on their private balcony before Brad went to bed. They were also smoking. Amy stayed outside a while longer. Between 5:15 and 5:30 a.m., Ron Bradley sees his daughter Amy for the last time. Ron awoke briefly and looked out at the balcony. He later stated he could see Amy's legs stretched out on the lounge chair and assumed she was asleep, and he closed his eyes again. Between 5:30 and 5:45 a.m., witnesses reported seeing Amy on the upper deck. These are 3 witnesses. Now, 2 were together. Their names are Lori and Crystal, and Lori was featured on the Netflix special. Crystal was not, but Lori was interviewed, and she was 18 at the time that this took place. She was featured in the Netflix show on camera, and her account was that she and the other witness, Crystal, couldn't sleep and decided to go to the upper deck very early in the morning. And at around 5:30 a.m., she saw Amy and Yellow take a glass elevator together up to the club, which was closed. Well, not verified. This is just my own speculation. I was on Royal Caribbean cruises from 1996 to 1998. And on two separate ships, I explicitly remember elevators going exclusively to the club. I always thought it was a way to check IDs more efficiently. You would leave the elevator and then there would be a bouncer there. But while that part wasn't verified, it was verified that it was a glass elevator, and Lori saw them get into the elevator and go up to the club where they exited. There was nowhere to go but the club once you exited the elevator, even though the club was closed at the time. She later saw Yellow walk briskly by her and her friend alone at 6 a.m. The reason she remembers is because previously Yellow had been trying to chat her and her friend up, and she believed when she saw him coming quickly towards them that he was going to try again since they were alone. But he did not do anything. He did not talk to them. He just walked briskly by them. But that's why she so clearly remembers that it was Yellow. She had encountered him earlier in the ship when he tried to chat up her and her friend. And also, in the Netflix special, there is a picture taken of Lori and her friends. Yellow is seated in the background, and his hand is up, blocking his face like this. But it was verified to be Yellow. I have read some reports that Lori and Crystal said that Amy had a camera and that Yellow handed her a brown drink before going into the elevator. But Lori did not mention these two aspects in her portion of the Netflix show. The third witness was not identified in any way, gender, age, etc., and was not affiliated with Lori and her friend. This was a completely separate person who, with a witness account of Amy and Yellow on the deck between 5:30 and 6 a.m. and going in the elevator up to the club. I have read other reports that attribute the camera and brown drink details to this third witness. So just to go again, there are reports that Lori and Crystal reported the camera and the brown drink being part of that sighting. But it was not mentioned in the Netflix special. And there are others that say the third witness that we know was not identified. That was when the brown drink and the camera being part of the account was introduced. Now we're at 6 a.m. and Amy is gone. Ron woke up again and noticed Amy was no longer on the balcony. Her shoes were still on the balcony, but her cigarettes and lighter were missing, so he begins searching the ship. At 6:30 a.m., the family alerted the staff of the ship. After searching on his own, Ron woke Iva and Brad and reported Amy missing. The family immediately asked crew members to prevent passengers from disembarking and to make an emergency announcement. Their request to delay disembarkation was denied, and they told it was too early for an announcement. At 7:50 a.m., the first public announcement is made. The ship broadcasted a message, "Will Amy Bradley please come to the purser's desk?" By this time, passengers had already begun disembarking for the day's port of call at Curacao. Between 12:15 and 1 p.m., crew members conducted a full ship search, but no sign of Amy was found. Between the 24th and 27th of March, 1998, the Coast Guard search failed to locate Amy. The Dutch Caribbean Coast Guard conducted a 4-day aerial and sea search around the waters near Curacao using helicopters and a radar-equipped plane. No trace of Amy was found. Royal Caribbean chartered a private boat to continue the search after the official effort ended. Next up, now versus then. This is to discuss how, ever since I have been following this case for years, several things have changed. So there's things that were reported when I used to research this case about 10, 13, 15 tops years ago, and there are things that are being reported now. And I just want to discuss what was different and what is now being said. The first and foremost prominent change. Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot to explain my method. I will be describing these as BCAD. BC is when I was following the case years ago, and AD refers to what people are primarily saying now. So, for the first big change in BC, there was no mention that Amy was gay. Whether the family decided to keep it private or it was viewed as just too much of a stigma 15 years ago, when I was reading about this, her homosexuality was speculated on but never confirmed. The reason this matters so much is because in BC, I believe Amy killed herself. I thought being 23, it was going to become much harder to hide her true identity from her conservative parents. Plus, though people say she had so much to look forward to, a new job, a new dog, tons of supportive friends, the stories and history of suicide prove time and time again we cannot predict who will commit this act simply by outside or perceived factors. Paul 2.0, an AOA community member who had seen the special before I did, told me that now Amy being gay was a fact and that she had come out to her parents, and he was right. While her parents said they were disappointed, they did not disown her, they were not fighting, and there wasn't even a change in the temperature of the family dynamic. And this changed my perception quite a bit. Also in BC, the following things are now different than the way I had learned them. Number one, in BC, I was told that since her shoes were on the balcony and all of her other shoes had been accounted for, Amy must have been barefoot when she went missing. This has since changed to the family not exactly sure of how many pairs of shoes Amy traveled with. Number two, I had definitely heard that Royal Caribbean had assured the family a thorough search had been made, but once the FBI got involved, they changed their statement to that only the common areas of the ship and the crew area was thoroughly searched. The Netflix special, in my opinion, made it seem as if a very thorough search was done initially, and I am still not sure what happened in this portion of the case. Number three, in BC, the story I heard was that post disappearing, Royal Caribbean tried to erase her so as not to disturb the passengers. I heard any flyers put up were taken down, and that all the pictures of her in the photo gallery had been removed once she was reported missing. The photo gallery part was actually more sinister in AD. Pictures of Amy had been removed while Amy was still on the ship, something Amy and her mother discovered while in the photo gallery. So before I heard that once she was missing, they removed all trace of her. Now I'm finding out that Royal Caribbean did allow flyers to be posted and slipped under the doors of cabins, and that also they did not remove the pictures after she was missing. Amy and her mother visited the photo gallery and noticed that despite pictures being taken of her during the trip, there were no photos in the photo gallery being displayed. Number four, in BC, all the witness reports were accounted for except for the three people that saw Amy on the deck. Those witness accounts are new, in my opinion. I have never heard of the glass elevator. I have never heard of the brown liquid, and I have never heard of the camera until this recent resurgence of this case. And number five, of course, there was no mention of Yellow's daughter that day. Coming back, she reported that Yellow came back changed, her mother said, and also that, I'm sorry, I'm going to start this part again. Number five, of course, there was no mention of Yellow's daughter. It's account of Yellow coming back changed from that voyage, and the pictures from the photo gallery of women his then wife found in his luggage. None of that back in the day. Of course, she was just a young child back then. I'm going to go a touch out of order and do the sightings next. The 24th of March, a cab driver claimed to see Amy on the island of Curacao. The morning the ship docked in Curacao, a local taxi driver told the Bradleys he had seen a barefoot young woman matching Amy's description, frantically searching for a phone. This report is especially interesting because it incorporates the idea that Amy's shoes were on the balcony and she may not have put on new shoes after, and she was indeed barefoot. In August 1998, Tourists reported seeing Amy on a beach in Curacao. 2 Canadian divers reported seeing a woman resembling Amy at Playa Porta Marie. She appeared to be with 2 men and was acting as though she wanted to speak to the divers but was prevented from doing so. The woman's tattoos and watch matched Amy's known features. This will be discussed later in the video. January 1999, a U.S. Navy officer said Amy approached him. William Hefner, a retired Navy officer, reported that a woman identifying herself as Amy Bradley approached him at a brothel in Curacao and pleaded for his help. The FBI later investigated, but found the building had since burned down. April of 2003. Witnesses saw a woman matching Amy's description in San Francisco. She appeared frightened, and 2 men noticed she had been recognized and forcibly took her away. March 2005, a witness in Barbados reported seeing a woman in a department store restroom who whispered her name was Amy. She was accompanied by several men and appeared distressed. In this account, the witness mentioned Amy asking the 2 men if they could see the children before they leave. Also in 2005, Amy's parents received an email with 2 images of a woman known as Jazz, featured on a sex worker site. The woman resembled Amy. Facial recognitions experts later stated the photos were highly likely to be Amy, though the FBI could not confirm their authenticity. This will most likely be a topic discussed on Wednesday, if I may make a prediction. We cannot show it here, but please view the picture of Jazz, spelled J-A-S, for yourself to see if you think it is Amy or not. January 2007, another report placed Amy in a restaurant in Aruba, dining with 4 unidentified men. No further information of this account is known. And in 2010, a human jawbone washed ashore in Aruba. Authorities initially linked it to the Natalie Holloway case, but declined to conduct DNA testing for Amy Bradley or any other missing individuals. 12 years to the day of her disappearance, a court officially declared Amy Lynn Bradley dead. Investigators have never recovered any physical remains. Now to the most prominent theories. Theory 1, Overboard. There are 2 separate theories under the Overboard umbrella. The myth played a big part in the first one. This theory was that Amy took off her shoes, got up on a small table that was pushed against the far wall of the balcony, tried to take a picture of the ship coming into the Curacao port, and fell overboard. Her father describes him getting up early for no particular reason at 6 a.m. with no alarm to wake him, with some thinking that what actually woke him was the sound of Amy falling into the water. And while it was reported by friends that Amy was nervous of being out in the ocean where she could not see land, this was a place where she could very clearly see land, so she may have been bolder about being closer to the edge than she had been while they were at sea. And her camera, cigarettes, and lighter were all missing. We will get more into missing camera with theory 3, but as for now, the Overboard theory poses that she had her cigarettes and lighter in her pocket and was holding her camera to take a pic and went overboard. That's why they're all missing, and that's what happened to her, is the first part of the Overboard theory. Another smaller school of thought is that Amy had been drinking all night and then smoking with her brother. She went into the cabin to get ready for bed. The yellow shirt she was wearing that evening was left on the arm of a chair. So it suggests that she took it off when she felt sick from the boat, and then the boat's motion of coming into shallower waters made her suddenly feel ill. She opened the balcony door. She stepped onto the table. She threw up. The ship hit a bump. She went overboard, and her father woke up. Theory 2. We kind of already covered this one. Back in BC, it was honestly what I thought. I just believed the timeline was too tight for her father to have seen her around 5:30 and her be missing by 6. Another odd piece of evidence that leads credence to both theory one of overboard and theory two of jumping is the open balcony door. The notice on the back of all doors in cabins containing balconies state that the balcony door should be closed before the door to the hallway is opened, or else you risk creating a bit of a mini tornado in the room itself. The testimony of the family was that the balcony door was open, not fully, but open. If she had left it open and then went out into the hall, Brad would have probably been awoken by the tiny windstorm that would have occurred. The boat was still moving at this time, so there are some that believe she never opened the door to the hall and either fell overboard or jumped. In other words, she never opened the door to the hall because the balcony door was partially opened. This brings us to the media's theory, theory three, trafficked. There is much to support this theory. However, after going over the Wikipedia entry and the Netflix special, I'm going to skip this part. Moving right along. Wikipedia, as mentioned above, has 3 witnesses seeing Amy with Yellow and her camera around 5:30, with Yellow leaving at 6 a.m. alone. But again, this is not what the Netflix special reported. But as for more evidence of trafficking, there were the missing pictures of Amy, perhaps targeting her, Yellow's then wife finding similar pictures in Yellow's suitcase. There's Yellow's inconclusive lie detector test. There's an account of Brad waiting outside while his parents are speaking to the FBI, only to have Yellow walk by and say, "Sorry about your sister." Some speculate while the Bradleys, this is just speculation, but when the Bradleys were speaking with the Royal Caribbean staff of their concerns, a covert order to clean the room was given. The room was cleaned, but as for whether there was an order to do it while they were speaking with the Royal Caribbean staff, or it was just cleaned simply because no one was in the room and that's the timeline when they do it, there's schools of thought on both. Some people speculate this may have been when her camera was taken to further destroy evidence. And then, of course, there is the sightings that kept happening. The man on the dock identified her tattoo, but this is another difference between BC and AD. In my BC research, I thought that I'd heard that the man identified Amy's tattoo when he called into a tip line saying that the tattoo was of a Tasmanian devil spinning a basketball, which really hurt that she had committed suicide theory. It was the one thing I really couldn't square away. How did he know what that tattoo looked like? In AD, I have since learned that the report on television mentioned her tattoo. This is when the man remembered Amy and called into the tip line. It is very different to bring evidence of a sighting that includes mention of a tattoo she had than to be told of the tattoo, remember her, and report it. I am not saying the man is lying. I just remember there being more stock in his testimonial in BC because it seems as if he produced the memory of the Tasmanian devil spinning a basketball unprompted. Okay, there's the picture of Jazz. It's incredibly heartbreaking. And there's a camp of people that believe it is absolutely her. It does look like her. But there is a camp that can't, won't, or don't believe it. If you watched the Netflix special, the internet has since become abuzz with TikToks and YouTube videos claiming that the cruise director and the man that had the room next to the Bradleys appeared too suspicious to be real, despite their willingness to do a documentary. Do you have any thoughts on that? There is so much to help support the trafficking theory, and I suspect this will be another thing that we can dive deeper into on Wednesday. Now for the 2 final theories that I didn't think to include when Anthony was making the rundown menu for me. The first of the final 2 is a dark one that is much more prevalent than when I was researching this case a decade or so ago. For some reason, there are more people around today expressing the possibility that her family was involved, that the short timeline can be explained by the family unaliving her themselves because of her recent revelation of sexuality, going against the family's expectations. Again, the only thing I can see is supporting this is the small timeline. Family sees her at 5:30, but by 6 decides she must be missing. If you haven't guessed, this has all a detail I cannot explain away, no matter what the theory. But I don't know if a family that participated in the of their own daughter would spend decades trying to publicly find her. It seems you're the culprit. Why draw attention? And speaking of the Bradley family, the final theory is Amy's family's hope that she is alive. Families, most notably mothers of missing children, have a history of sensing the time when there is no more hope, with many being proven correct. In many of these cases, there is a sense or a feeling of their child being permanently gone. And again, many of these nebulous, otherworldly senses prove to be right across many missing children cases. Mrs. Bradley has said that she never experienced this gossamer cosmic confirmation and still believes her daughter to be alive. This is also supported by the new information revealed in episode 3 of a URL address that keeps visiting the website Amy Bradley is missing on days important to the family. The question posed is, who else but Amy would be visiting and staying so long on the site on these days? So there is a faction of people who believe Amy is still alive, perhaps not even trafficked, just living her life, or remaining quiet to keep safe children she may have had over time that were mentioned in one of the witness sightings, or to keep safe the family searching for her in America. These are all we can speak of on Wednesday. We can talk about any aspect you guys wish. But before we go, I would like to share my theory. Now, there is no theory that is not controversial. Every theory has holes, no explanation is airtight, thus enduring this enduring horrific mystery. If anything was completely correct, it would have been solved. So without further ado, this is what I myself believe at this point. I believe Yellow was working with a trafficking network that thought there was an untapped market for victims in cruise ships. I believe with the international law, the chance she could have just been noted as fallen overboard and other aspects we're not even thinking of, that taking a woman every once in a great while off a ship would be a new way to procure women to be trafficked. I think they tried it. I think the two-person sighting of Yellow and Amy going up to the dance club and him returning alone is when it happened. I'm sorry, three-person sighting. There was somebody else who said that. In that moment, when she went up to the nightclub, even though it was closed, and Yellow returned alone, I think that is where the handoff occurred. The only sighting we discussed that I think could be true is the first one, the morning the ship docked by the taxi driver. Perhaps athletic Amy got away from the men, ran looking for a phone, only to be immediately recaptured. But I don't even fully believe that sighting. Sadly, I think the trafficking ring underestimated how the family and how the FBI and the family of a missing girl from Virginia would never give up. I think that once the heat was on, Amy and abandoned any future attempts, discovering exactly why cruise ships were not an untapped well. It was not an operation that was going to work. They never tried it again. We don't know what, this is also why I believe Yellow's lie detector test was inconclusive. Inconclusive usually means that there were parts where he was telling the truth and there were parts where there were deception. That's usually what it means, but no, it has never been released. His lie detector test, the questions have never been released. His answers have never been released, and they couldn't be used in a court of law anyway. But as for my belief, let's speculate that he was asked these questions. Did he harm her? No. Did he hurt? No. Does he know what happened to her? Now, if he could convince himself that after the handoff, no, he does not know what happened to her, maybe he could answer all three of those questions truthfully while the others showed deception. I don't know, but I always thought that if he handed her off to someone else, he could truthfully say he did not harm her. He did not her, and he did not know precisely what happened to her. As for the other sightings, I think perhaps women of similar horrible and desperate fate over the years have heard of the missing Amy Bradley and used her name in hopes of rescue. I believe those who think they saw her truly think they, but I don't think it's her in the picture. I don't believe she was seen since 1998. I don't believe she is alive. And in conclusion, I am very into true crime. Maura Murray, Madeleine McCann, Brandon Lawson, Who's in Truth, Jennifer Kesse, Zeb Quinn, a case which has since been solved, and JonBenet Ramsey. All pieces where you put together a puzzle and there are pieces missing. For me, this case does not have missing pieces. This is a puzzle that when put together into a complete picture, there are pieces left over that do not fit. The theory I give you doesn't explain the open balcony door or the missing camera. And it's too odd to believe that her father saw her on the balcony at approximately 5:20 in the morning, but she was trafficked by 6 a.m. Nothing fits completely. And as for what Frankie C thinks, I will disclose that in Wednesday's live chat. I thoroughly look forward to discussing this with you on Wednesday, August 20th at 8:30 p.m. on a live discussion. I truly hope to see you there. Feel free to leave comments below to give me an idea of what lies ahead for Wednesday. Thanks to Anthony for letting me do this. Thanks to my producer, Frankie C, for getting me through this. And thanks to you for attending my review. Good night.